You may think that superheroes were invented in the United States in the 50s or the 60s. You're wrong. Superheroes with superpower were actually invented and created in Greece 3,000 years ago. They have 12 Olympian gods. The most important of them is Zeus. When the Romans conquered Greece, they didn't really bother to create new gods, and therefore they literally cut and paste the Greek gods and translate into Roman religion. Except one god, a true Roman god. Let me introduce him to him. His name is Janus, and he's considered the god of transitions because he symbolized the moment of transition between life and death, war and peace, summer and winter. He was really an important god according to the Romans. And in case you wonder why January is called that way, it's because he was worshipped as the god of the beginning, and January is called that way in honor of Janus. Now, look at the iconic feature of Janus. He has two faces. One looking at the past, the face of wisdom, because we have to learn from the past, and one looking at the future, a younger, more energetic face, looking at the future, looking at the age of change, at the age of transition. So we should relate to Janus because we're exactly in an age of change as we speak. And as we look into the future, the question is, which kind of future do we want to see and are we seeing? The answer is, we don't know. We don't know what the future unfolds, but we probably know that it's unlikely that the future can be defined as a new normal, which, to my surprise, is been kind of accepted term from many organizations, newspaper, and academic. But really, should we really expect normality going forward? In order to understand this, I'm going to ask once more some help from our Greek friends, because normal is a Greek word for kanonikos, means conforming to a type, standard, regular, average, predictable, what people expect. And my question to you is, are we really sure that what is coming next can be defined as normal? In my view, what I think is coming next can be better defined as a new context, something that we need to shape, that's going to be made by chaos, crisis, the necessity to take decisions, complexity, confusion, and guess what? Constant change. So this conversation is divided in two parts. The bad news and the good news. The bad news is going to last only a few seconds, and the bad news part is going to last a little bit longer. It's going to be a lot of fun, but it's going to be a little bit smelly and with some tears. Smelly because we have to sweat and to do quite a lot of work over there. Now, the bad news is you're going to lose your job. Let me repeat, you are going to lose your job, or at least the job that you're currently doing is going to be so different in 3, maximum 5 years down the line that you need to acquire completely new skills in order to be able to do it. It's fair to say that people losing jobs happen before because of technological changes. Look at this guy, for example. His job was to wake up people at 5:30 in the morning, and he probably lost his job when the alarm clock were invented. And the second guy is a guy that lost his job as well when they invented a proper radar. However, we shouldn't feel too sorry for him because he doesn't look too happy anyway. So the question is, why are we going to lose our job? We're going to lose our job because the moment that we're living and the characteristic of what the new context will be can be defined perhaps in 3 different elements. The first one, constant change, means amazing speed, exponential speed. The exponential speed of what we're seeing is incredible right now. The second element is what we see in front of us and the magnitude of the problem. Problems are not exclusively being complicated, but also complex. This is not just a semantic difference between the two words, but a complicated problem requires technical expertise to solve it, while a complex problem requires constant learning, adaptation, sense-making, the capacity to connect the dots, the capacity to develop contextual intelligence, and the capacity of collaborating between different people. But the last element is what we're seeing right now is not only happening fast, is not only complicated and complex, but is also changing us. It's changing the way we relate to each other, it's changing the way we relate to other human beings and to society in general, to the point that Kai-Fu Lee described the society that we're moving into, it's called the Homo society, which fundamentally is a society in which online will merge with offline. And to a certain extent, if you think about, we're becoming like mangroves. These amazing plants, so important for the ecosystem, they're growing in brackish water. An example, let me introduce you to Akiko Kondo, who has recently met and married an hologram. However, as a personal favor, may I kindly ask you not to say this to my wife, because she can be tempted to do exactly the same. So, let me show you a wonderful masterpiece. It's a Ferrari T8. And my question to you is, what allows this car to go to up to 350 kilometers per hour? When I asked these questions in my workshop and seminar, people responded by saying the engine, the aerodynamics, the road condition, the tires, the pilot, the technology, and these answers are correct. But when you think about what allows this car or any car to go up to the speed are the brakes. So in a moment where you're entering such a new context, my question to you is, are you using your brakes? Or if you want, rule number one of what you have to do when you lose your job, rule number one is take care of yourself. Let me give a bit of evidence of this element. People, when they have a pet, in 96% of the cases, they end up taking care of their pets by following the instruction given by the vet. When they take elderly parents or maybe a vulnerable and sick friend to the doctor, it's still very high. 88% of people end up following the instruction of the doctor. But what's happened when we go to the doctor for ourselves? And in less than 40% of the cases, we are taking care of ourselves the way the doctor is telling us to do. Because we keep on thinking that we can postpone the moment in which we're taking care of ourselves, and it's dangerous to defer our maintenance. So let me, to a certain extent, it is also interesting to see that people appear to be more concerned about recharging their phone than recharging themselves. So the first rule, let me repeat, is very important. The first rule when you lose your job is to take care of yourself. And like Jordan Peterson wrote, you have to treat yourself like someone you're responsible for helping. So the first rule is taking care of yourself. And then what? We'll start with this very powerful question. What are you good at? What are your strengths? What is your talent? What is your passion? And in case you're still struggling in understanding and finding the right answer, you can actually find some great help from your friends. So let me share a small secret with you. Something that you may want to do is send an SMS or WhatsApp to 50 people, colleagues and friends that knows you quite well. And you ask them, which 3 words comes to your mind when you think of me? Then sit down, read, and listen what they say to you. This is an amazing opportunity to learn from other people, and probably you will find out gift, amazing skills, capacities, insights that will help you to find the way. Now, let's say for a second that you are a portfolio manager. A portfolio manager is somebody who's managing the financial portfolio of somebody, and the objective of that person is to increase the value of this portfolio. Let's assume that rather than managing the portfolio of somebody else, you have to increase the value of your career. Increase the value of your career. So what would you do? Now, I've been director of human resources in several organizations, and I noticed that a lot of people do a very simple mistake, which is they confuse the value of their career with their salaries. So they try to constantly increase their salaries without increasing the value and the impact that they provide to their company. This is a big mistake. My suggestion is focus first on increasing the value of your career. And how do you increase the value of your career? By doing these three things, which I believe is going to be helpful in your journey. The first one, you have to increase and develop your knowledge capital. Knowledge capital is what you know. And there are fundamentally two kinds of learning. The technical learning, which is relatively easy to measure. Let's say you want to learn to play piano, to play tennis, or a language. There are different steps that gives you a sense of how much you have progressed on this specific domain. But also the personal learning, which to me is the starting point, because we tend to forget that we are human being before human doing. So start with the personal learning. Two things to remember. The first one, make sure that you invest at least 5 hours per week in your professional development, because you don't do it, you're kind of responsible and you're not actually increasing the value of your career. And the second one is to make sure that whatever you learned has to translate it into practical results. So what if I were to say to you that I know by heart all the recipe of Italian cuisines, I can do pasta, pizza, melanzane parmigiana, my favorite, but I never cooked a dish. You would not take me seriously because I have not demonstrated that my knowledge has an impact. So make sure that you know how to cook as well, meaning that in addition to the theoretical knowledge, this has translated into results and impact for your company, your colleagues, the clients that you serve. The second thing that you have to do is to reinforce your relationship capital. And let's be clear about one thing. This is not about increasing exponentially the number of people that you have contact with. It's not about having 50,000 followers on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever social media. It's about being at the service of others. So to a certain extent, your relationship capital is like your bank account. You have to deposit first before you're able to withdraw. And let's also understand another point, which is visibility and credibility are two different things. You don't want to be visible with 1 million people. You want to be credible with few hundred people. And credibility is a lot to do with developing trust, integrity, and a way of doing things that makes you feel comfortable. The third element that we discussed is you have to protect your reputational capital. This is essential. Your reputation is fundamentally what people say about you when not in the room. And it's a lot to do, is defined by what you're not prepared to do in order to achieve whatever goals you set yourself to. This is absolutely important. And if you think about our professional and personal value, the PPV is equal to knowledge capital plus relationship capital multiplied by reputational capital. So the question is, why multiplied? Well, because we know that a number multiplied by 0 remains 0. So the reputational capital is incredibly important, and you have to preserve and to curate in an impeccable way. So your professional and personal value is therefore equal to your knowledge capital plus relationship capital multiplied by the reputational capital. So is this formula, the results of 20 years of analysis and studies, going to get me the Nobel Prize? I don't think so. I don't think so. This is the result of an experience and some reflection that I want to share with you. A few years ago, I was summoned by my boss, and I really thought that he wanted to discuss the work that I've done during the weekend, because he has the habit to ask me to do work over the weekend. As I enter into his office, he looked at me and he said, "You need to leave." I remained silent, and after a few seconds of disbelief, I asked, "Can you tell me why?" And his answer was, "I don't have time to dwell into details. Go." So I left his office, and with a distinct feeling that he enjoyed that conversation, that to me wasn't a conversation, was an execution. It was really terrible. I wasn't only fired, I was, I believe, obliterated. And then I left this organization literally a couple of days later. I still believe that in my 32 years experience, it's been the most traumatic experience of my professional life. I have to confess that the week following this day were terrible. I didn't sleep. I was desperate, upset. I didn't sleep many times. And these are the tears that I was referring at the beginning of the speech. Then one day, I was walking along the lake. I remembered that many years before, my daughter came to me. She was 5 at the time, and she asked a very simple question. The question was, "Daddy, where do I find happiness? Daddy, where do I find happiness?" I was tempted to tell her, "Ask Mommy," but then my wife gave me quite a hard look, so I decided not to. And so a few days later, I wrote her a very short story that I'm going to share with you. So many years ago, the god of darkness met in a secret place, and their objective was to hide happiness from humankind. One of the gods suggested to hide happiness on the top of the mountains. And after a few minutes, the other god said, "You know what? It's not going to work because human being eventually will be able to climb the mountains and he will be able to find happiness." A few minutes later, another god suggested to hide happiness at the bottom of the sea. And sure enough, the other one, they said, "Listen, it's not going to work because eventually, man will be able to go at the bottom of the sea and find happiness." A few moments of silence occurred, and then the most vicious of these gods said, "I know where to hide happiness. We can hide happiness in the bottom of people's heart because they will be so busy in climbing mountains and going at the bottom of the sea, they will forget to look into their heart." That's a story that I told my daughter to say, "Listen, you have to find happiness in the bottom of your heart." So 10 years later, after writing the story became relevant to me. And I realized that actually the battle that I needed to find and to fight wasn't a battle outside of me against somebody, but inside of me for my own sake, and allow me to say also for my own sanity and for the one of my family. It was not a difficult moment, and that's related to the tears and the sweat that I mentioned at the beginning. So I realized that if I needed to take care of myself, I needed to further develop my knowledge capital, I needed to reinforce my relationship capital, and I need to protect my reputational capital. And all of a sudden, the game changed. My inner game changed completely. I started to find meaning in a place that probably I couldn't find it before. And I realized that my heart, little by little, was not filled with toxic poison anymore, but with happiness and with purpose that perhaps I lost before. I found out that when you climb the mountains, like the one that I was trying to climb myself, I was able to find and to keep my faith in myself after losing my innocence. I found out that what I was saying, that what I was doing, and what I was thinking was in the same place. I found out that my search for meaning was completed. I started again to breathe, I started again to smile, and I was free. So, thanks for listening.